So all the tutorials I'm seeing about audio and the Osmo Pocket 3 are all showing you how to use something else with your Osmo when it comes to audio. But here's the thing. You just dropped a lot of coins to buy this camera. So in this video, I'm gonna cover all of my audio settings using my Osmo Pocket 3 so that way I can make the most out of this little camera. I'm also gonna give you some food for thought of things to consider when filming with the camera as well, with audio in mind. And then finally, we're gonna hop into Adobe Premiere Pro, my editor of choice, so I can show you a few things that I do when editing audio so that way I can get the most out of it regardless of how I'm filming. Hello everyone, I'm Halise. I'm a filmmaker and storyteller based in Atlanta, Georgia. And on this channel, I document my chaotic good life. Subscribe, follow, social media, all of the things. So the Osmo Pocket 3 has 3 different microphones built into it. Let's flip it to the above camera and I'll show you what I mean. There's one right here next to the words Pocket 3. There's one on the back of the camera. And then there's one on the opposite side as well. There is no microphone on this front side of the camera. Now, I will say in regards to audio coming directly out of a camera, the Osmo Pocket 3 is actually not too bad. With all these microphones, it can pick up some pretty decent sound, especially if you just keep it at a certain distance away from you, like maybe holding it at arm's length, it's probably gonna pick you up pretty well. So there's 2 different menus to consider when thinking about audio settings for your Osmo Pocket 3. The first is the sort of main settings menu. You swipe down and from there you hit that little cog and that takes you to the sort of general settings of the camera, and in there mixed in are a few audio settings that you'll want to keep in mind. The second place you go for audio settings is by swiping over from the right to the left side of the screen and then hitting that little microphone icon right next to the little camera icon that you see. That'll take you to the other audio settings as well. You will need to be in pro mode to get the most out of it, because if you turn that off, boom, everything kind of goes away and you are very limited by the settings you have on the camera. So those are the 2 places that you will go to mess with audio in this camera, whether you're working on audio just directly within the camera of what it can do, or again, if you're using a DJI Mic 2 with it, or the other little mini square DJI mic that they offer as well. So that in mind, let's talk about a few microphone settings within the main settings that I wanna make sure y'all know about. So swiping down from the top again, going to the cog, there are 2 things in this settings menu that I wanna make sure you know about. The first will be the wireless mic. Again, when we connect our DJI Mic 2, this will all make more sense, but this will be where you go to make any adjustments to your DJI Mic 2 that is connected to your Osmo Pocket 3. And then the other setting in here I wanna make sure you know about is this one, the built-in mic audio backup. What this does is if you enable it and turn it on, it records your audio separate from your video. It basically duplicates it onto your micro SD card. So what you end up with is your video file with your audio attached to it like normal, your proxy file, which is that LRF file, which I've talked about in a video as well, go check that out. And then finally, you get a separate WAV file that is literally the same audio from the video file. If you're not using a DJI mic, it can be a bit redundant and not necessary, which is why a lot of the time I keep it off because I don't generally need it. But what can be really neat about it is if you have your DJI Mic 2 connected to the camera and you turn this on, it essentially creates a scratch track for you because your video file that you film will now have the audio from this. And then that separate WAV file will be the audio straight from the camera. This is professionally what we call a scratch track. It's basically the audio straight out of the camera with nothing done to it. Sometimes you might walk out of range with your DJI Mic 2 or again, the other microphones you can connect to it, and then you lose out on that audio potentially. This basically acts as like a backup to the backup audio for you if you want that. Now let's check out the Pro menu microphone settings and go over those a little bit as well. So again, we're gonna swipe over from the right to the left of the camera, and then we're going to tap on the little microphone right next to Pro, and that's how we get to these settings here. I always like to keep my channel on stereo. You can do stereo or mono. So with mono audio, that's essentially audio that just just all records to one audio track. Whereas stereo, it's two different audio tracks, a left and a right. In post, this can be really helpful because it'll allow you to kind of throw the sounds to the left and the right to make it really interesting. So right now, for example, if you were to be listening to me maybe on your headphones or earbuds, I could make it so that the audio you're hearing of me right now is coming from the left track, the left side of your computer or your AirPods or whatever you're listening to me on right now. Or I can make it coming from the right track. So then I sound like I'm coming from your right the entire time. Or I could make it to where I'm coming from all sides of you all the time and I'm having the audio go back and forth and back and forth. That's the beauty of having stereo sound. It's a way for you to try to get the best quality audio you can out of the device while also having more control of how you manipulate the audio in whatever editor you decide to work in. So wind noise reduction. I actually always keep mine on. So wind noise, that's when you hear the, I can mimic it for you right now. And by keeping wind noise reduction on, that'll help to get rid of that as much as possible. And then finally, the directional audio. So this is a way for you to toggle through which microphones are on and off for the camera. So you can have it be all, front and back, and that's it. I tend to just leave it on all. I find that it works really well for me when I do that, whether I'm talking to the camera from the front like this, or if I've flipped it, for example, and I'm talking to the camera this way, it's still picking me up. I just keep it on all because I find that if I don't keep it on all, I'll probably forget to put it back on all, and then I will have ruined audio for the next thing I film. All right, so now that I've covered all my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 audio settings using no extra microphone or anything like that, let's now head outside and hear what it sounds like with these different settings. And then I'll also show you what it sounds like if you change a few of the settings as well. Let's do it. Here I am talking to the Osmo Pocket 3. I'm not moving. You probably hear the birds singing though, which I love. It is springtime. We're about to hit summer almost in Atlanta, so the birds are singing, everybody's out chit-chatting, Twitter-pated, if you will. Welcome back. That was fun, huh? I didn't actually leave. That's me from like a different day, probably. Anyway, back to the Osmo Pocket 3. So now that we know what the Osmo Pocket 3 more or less sounds like if you just use it on its own with nothing else, and it doesn't sound too bad if I do say so myself, just saying. Now let's talk about incorporating the DJI Mic 2 with it as well. So whenever you turn on your DJI Mic 2 by just pressing that power button on the side, it should automatically link up to your Osmo. As you can see, mine just did, and it also lets you know what the battery life of it is as well across the top of the screen. If for some reason yours doesn't link up and it gets messed up, don't freak out, it's fine. I'll show you how to reconnect it really quick. So with your DJI Mic 2 turned off and your Osmo Pocket 3 turned on, you're gonna swipe down from the top to the bottom and go to the settings icon. From there, you're gonna hit wireless mic. And then finally, you're gonna click TX1 because you'd probably just want it to be that one. And then you're gonna just follow the instructions. So right now it wants me to power it on. Perfect. And then the other thing you're gonna do is you're going to hold this link icon right here in the side. It should be blinking like this, but you're just gonna hold this link down until it starts blinking faster. Once that happens, it will stop blinking and have a steady light, and that's how you know it is connected. And you can see it says right there, DJI Osmo Audio connected. And then you're just gonna hit the confirm button, and there you go. One other thing to note too is that you can actually connect 2 different microphones to it as well. That can be really helpful if you're someone who's maybe trying to interview a friend, or it's you and a friend vlogging together, something like that. Okay, so now that my Mic 2 is connected, here are a few settings I like to keep in mind whenever I am filming with my Osmo Pocket 3. The first thing is vibration. I like to have the vibration on. Essentially, whenever you hit record on your DJI Mic 2, it'll vibrate, and I like that. It's just another fail-safe to let me know the microphone's on, it's rolling, I'm good, on top of seeing that little red record button. I just I like it. I like the vibration. The other setting that I don't keep on is low cut. So what that does is it tries to get rid of some of the ums and uhs, like sort of the low vibrations of things you'll hear. I tend to keep that off because if I am gonna make those kinds of edits, I generally will just do that in my editor, which we'll see later on. The other thing though, that I always have on with my DJI Mic 2 is 32-bit float recording. Ever since 32-bit float has come out on the game and been added to different microphones and tech in an affordable way, I have incorporated it across my entire workflow. Essentially, the way the data is recorded of the audio, it's almost impossible to peak the microphone. So much so that there usually isn't any gain settings inside a microphone that can record in 32-bit float. This matters because of this next setting that I want to show you that I think everyone should turn on if they have the capability with the DJI Mic 2, the audio to video sync. I love this setting and I always have it turned on because, and I'll click away and show you, the way it works is with it turned on, when I hit record on the camera, this starts recording too. Automatically. The thing that makes the DJI Mic 2 dope is that, yeah, when I'm recording to the Osmo, it's receiving the transmitter's audio and recording to it directly, right? So my video file will have the audio from the transmitter. But something I always do is I always like to also be recording a 32-bit float track, the transmitter itself. So that way, if I ever do peak on this, I always have really, really clean backup audio that I can use. 32-bit float recording, have that turned on, and audio to video sync. That is what you need to have on for this to work. And so when I stop recording, it turns off the audio on the DJI Mic 2 as well. Sometimes you can walk out of range while talking on this microphone, filming with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. And if that happens, it's fine. Once again, you have backup audio that's really good, 32-bit float, really good quality audio, built into the transmitter, and you just have to pull it off the transmitter, and there you go. You'll notice if your DJI Mic 2 is connected, you now have this green bar going across the top of the screen. That's your audio levels in real time, and it's kind of letting you see where everything is. So if I talk super loud, you can see I go into the orange and the yellow. So that's good to note because when you swipe over from the right, you'll notice that the little microphone icon is now replaced with a little icon version of your DJI mic. And you'll notice we have a few more settings now that we can mess with because our microphone is connected. Now it's worth noting that yes, your DJI Mic 2 can record in 32-bit float inside the transmitter itself. You need to connect it using a USB-C and get that 32-bit float audio off of it. What it transmits to your Osmo Pocket 3 is standard 48 kilohertz audio, which again is not bad. So because of that, even though the 32-bit float audio will not peak, the audio the transmitter is sending to the camera can peak. You can blow it out. So you'll notice we have a transmitter gain setting now. Think of gain as just the volume of the microphone. So if you're someone who is a bit loud when you speak, it might be worth it to drop your gain a little bit. Drop it like boot, -10, like very low. So now you see, yeah, I can't even like I gotta really yell to get it to get into the orange or the yellow. I would say a safe bet to consider with your gain is that as long as you're kind of staying in the green getting into orange, you're probably getting decent levels most of the time on your DJI Osmo Pocket 3. If you start to get really loud and it's just you getting all the way to the red, you're losing data and you're losing audio and you're probably peaking the microphone. Try not to do that. Or if you were out somewhere and you're seeing that it's loud in your surroundings and you're constantly hitting the red, maybe pop in, swipe over, and go to that transmitter gain and drop it down a bit. Again, but for me, I rarely mess with the gain. I just keep it on 0, and that tends to work well for me regardless of what I'm filming. And then the final two settings, the mute transmitter, I always keep that off. Even as a filmmaker, I'm trying to think of a time where I would want to mute the transmitter, and I can't, nothing comes to mind. And then finally, the transmitter noise reduction. This is different from general wind noise reduction for inside the Osmo Pocket 3 itself. The transmitter noise reduction is a bit more like algorithmic-y, clean up the audio in general. I tend to keep it off because I feel like it's a bit too processed for my taste. But I will say, if you are walking outside and it's really noisy, things like that, definitely worth turning it on. You'll know it's on because the color on your DJI Mic 2, the linking light color, will change to this like sort of greenish yellowish situation, and then you'll know it's off because it'll be back to blue. So definitely keep it in mind. It's worth messing around with. In fact, like we did before, let's hop back outside and now use our Osmo Pocket 3 with our DJI Mic 2 so you can hear what some of these things are in real time.
Here is what it sounds like. And obviously, you know, when you're using this type of microphone, doesn't matter how far or close you are away from the camera, it's gonna pick you up. And then obviously, I have the backup audio as well with the 32-bit float happening right now. Something else that I currently have right now is that the like noise enhancement / noise reduction that you can opt into using your Osmo Pocket 3 in the settings is currently off. This is what it just sounds like with all of that turned off. Okay, so now I'm talking and I have the noise reduction settings turned on, and I know it's on because the light was blue on here and now it is green. I don't hate this usually, but I will say I feel like it overcompensates a smidge. Like it usually to me sounds a smidge just too processed, you know? But that's just me.
If you're enjoying this video and enjoying my teaching style, awesome, that's by design. I actually teach online full time. I have a variety of courses available. If you head over to my website, stumblewell.com/bundle, I've actually bundled together 4 of my favorite courses that I've put together over the years. One of them is called Intro to Adobe Premiere Pro. So if you've never opened the platform before, you've never touched that purple icon, I literally hit it with you and walk through you getting going. And I also give you footage of myself to edit along as well. But beyond that, I also teach other sides of the technical skills. So if editing is not the thing you're worried about, but you're trying to learn how to light yourself better, maybe get off of that flat background, dope. I have a class called Good Lighting and Framing at Any Budget, where I go over how to frame yourself in a space and how to light yourself in a space, whether you have zero budget to a little bit of budget to invest in some lighting, etc. Then within the bundle, I also have a course called How to Tell a Story in a Minute or Less. Maybe you're someone who's trying to create YouTube shorts, for example, or post them to other places on the internet. I have a course that kind of helps you spark that creativity to tell your own story and just hop right into it. If Premiere Pro scares you, which I get, it can be a lot, I have a course on Adobe Express. Maybe you're a social media manager or you're a small business owner and you're trying to figure out how to be on the internet more and market your business, market your creativity more. Adobe Express is the place to go for that. If you're interested in any of those courses or the bundle itself, head over to my website, stumblewell.com/bundle to check it out, or check out the link down in the description box. Either way, it'll get you there. All right, so with that being said, let's mess with some audio in Adobe Premiere Pro. Okay, so now we're in Adobe Premiere Pro. I've pulled just one of the clips of me filming myself on the Osmo Pocket 3 that you probably saw earlier, and this is what it sounds like, again, with nothing.
I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because, again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get too bad.
So the first thing I usually like to do is I like to double check and see where my meters are showing. So when we played this back,
I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because
the levels are pretty good. I'm looking at, it was like right between -9 and -15 dB, which I would say for audio coming straight from the Osmo isn't bad. Usually what I like to see with my audio levels by the time we're done is I want more or less the audio to be right at about -3. I find that once I can get to about -3 with speaking audio, it sounds really good on YouTube. It sounds really good on your TV if you're watching me casting my videos to a TV. That's our goal, right? How to adjust the gain in general. Say you just want the gain to be higher. There's a few ways you can do that. I just hit the plus key a few times to zoom in, but right in the middle of the audio, there's a white clear bar. If you raise that, that's one way to just raise the volume in general, or the gain if you want to be specific. So if I raise it right now to like, I don't know, 5 dB extra.
No, I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because, again, I know that in editing,
yeah, now we're starting to get a little bit closer. We're getting to like -6-ish dB, which isn't half bad. Another way you can do this as well is in the properties tab over here on the right, you'll see that the same way that I just raised and lowered the audio here, once I raised it all the way, it's reflected in audio down here as well. So this is another way, again, to do the exact same thing. Raise the overall volume. Another thing you can do is say you actually want to have the volume decrease or increase at certain points. You can add things like keyframes to a clip. So the fastest way to add a keyframe to your clip is to hit the P key on the keyboard. Then that brings up the pen tool, and from there you can create these little keyframes, which are just diamonds that show up on your audio clip. And from there, once you create enough diamonds, then you can hit the V key on your keyboard to bring it back to like your pointer mouse and just drop the audio down. So let's play that back. I can kind of zhuzh up the audio. So if there's ever time where maybe you say a curse word or something really loud happens in the background, you could always just like lower that section down a little bit. So those are like the general rules of audio, things to keep in mind. Before we go too much further, I want to make sure that we have the right windows up. So when I get into the audio editing portion of whatever I'm going to do, I always like to have my audio track mixer up, which is different from the audio mixer itself. The way I tend to do my audio editing is I tend to use the effects and sends tab a lot. It's up here in the very left-hand top corner. It's that little arrow. If we click on it and twill down, it opens up these new sort of like drop down menus where you can add mass audio effects to an entire track of something. So the first thing I like to do with any sort of dialogue of me that I'm working from is I like to do the vocal enhancer, which is part of the parametric equalizer. So if you go to filter and EQ, parametric equalizer, I hit that. And then by double clicking, that brings up the window for me to make changes. And I always use the preset vocal enhancer. So what that does is I just feel like it really cleans up my audio and just enhances the natural tones of my voice that much more. Mine just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get. The second thing I add, depending on if I'm filming inside or outside, is I'll add a multi-band compressor. So within that, the preset I like to use within the multi-band compressor is I like to use the de-esser because I feel like I tend to talk with a lot of sounds in my mouth. I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get too bad. Now you'll notice when I incorporated the de-esser, it did help, but it also lowered all the volume back down overall because it is kind of clearing a lot of things at various thresholds, which is fine. We're gonna fix that. The final thing that I like to put, I don't usually use a denoise if I'm outside because I don't mind the ambient sounds. But if you want to, you can incorporate a denoise. When I'm incorporating denoise though, I really like to make sure that I have the processing focus set to this kind of mountain curve. And then something else I do is I don't make it so epic. Right now it's processing at like 40%. And I usually feel like that's way too high. No, I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the. Yeah, I usually feel like that's way too much. I usually just drop it down to like 10%. Mine just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, not bad. So that's that. And then the final thing I do, because you'll notice, even though we had bumped up the audio, it's gotten quieter and quieter and quieter because we're doing all of this processing power to it. The final thing that I always do is I always put a hard limiter. And that is what kind of gets the audio back up usually to a volume that I want, or trying to get our decibels to be at like -6, -3-ish. And I usually bump it all the way up to the preset that's -0.1 dB. That's usually what I have to do. And even then, sometimes we'll probably see I'll still need to go in. So just to do some final touches, I'm gonna bump it up to like 3 dB. Just to really make sure we're getting to like that -3 dB that we want. No, I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get too bad. Just so you can hear what it sounded like from before, I'm gonna turn them all off again so we can hear it. So here's where we started. No, I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get too bad. All right, so that's where we started, and then now turning everything back on. No, I personally don't mind just talking straight to the Osmo like this because again, I know that in editing, I can kind of zhuzh up the audio if things get too bad. So it's really subtle, but if you play it back and listen, you'll hear that the sort of ambient background hum has decreased a little bit. It's still there, but it's decreased a little. The birds, again, decreased a little, but still there. You still get a feeling of the space that I am outside, but it's not so intense. And then on top of that, my vocals have been enhanced just a little bit to make sure that I'm separated from the background noise that you hear. These are the things I'm adding to my audio track to make sure that I sound pretty crisp and pretty clear for you. One thing I want to make sure to mention though, I also think it's really good to know about this really helpful tool in Adobe Premiere Pro, and it's called speech enhancement. All right, so I found an audio clip that has all that construction noise that was happening in the background. So let's hear it. It's probably not going to be great because all of that construction in the background, but let's hear it.
This is what it's sounding like with that construction. I think that's a real world example of what you could expect. This is what it's sounding like with no editing. Okay.
This is a great example of when I would say maybe try speech enhancement. So speech enhancement is actually an AI model that's built into Adobe Premiere Pro. And what it does is you'll need an internet connection if you do it, but it literally cleans up the audio and takes a best guess. So in order to get to it, you're going to right click your audio and then go to enable enhance speech. And you'll immediately start seeing things happening. It's shooting it up to the cloud, power of Adobe Sensei. This can be, again, a really helpful tool, but I tend to use it sparingly and kind of mix it down a bit. So let's play it back now and see how it sounds.
This is what it's sounding like with that construction. I think that's a real world example of what you could expect.
That was great. One thing I will say to play around with is usually sometimes when I use it, I feel like it mixes it so hard, so far down that, again, in the same way that the DJI Mic 2 kind of enhances things and I don't quite like the way it sounds, sometimes that happens with speech enhancement too. So when that does, what I usually do is I head over to the mix amount and I usually drop it down to 4. I find that around there, it's cleaning it up like I want, but not over processing and cleaning it up, if that makes sense. Again, for me, it's all about how can I make my voice sound clear and crisp, but not have you lose a sense of what's happening. Something else I want to quickly show you though, if you are someone who has purchased the creator combo or some sort of combo that comes with a microphone with your Osmo Pocket 3, and you are going to pull that 32-bit flow audio from the device itself, I want to quickly show you how to sync it in Adobe Premiere Pro because that is definitely worth knowing. Okay, so here's a clip that I have of me talking with my microphones. So I know that I have some DJI Mic 2 audio to go with it. So we're going to go and find that clip and we're just going to drop it there. Now, all right. So they're not in sync. Oh no. Now, usually you would try to do this manually. It's a whole thing. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? That's why you usually see people clap, so whatever. We don't have to do all that. Literally highlight both clips, right click, and then go to synchronize. Some things are gonna pop up. None of them really matter, just hit okay. And boom, it was very subtle, but you'll see that it has now shifted my audio, the good 32-bit flow audio, to be aligned with the 24 kilohertz audio that was added to the video clip, all right? So when we play it back, this time I have my DJI Mic 2. All right, so they're both aligned. Now, if I wanted to take it a step further, I could Command L, Control L on a PC to separate this audio from the video, delete it, and then drag it up, holding Shift, so that way it stays aligned. Double check. Turned on, and I'm using that to record audio. Perfect. And then if I wanted to now lock them together, I would just highlight them both and hit Command L, Control L, and now they're locked. You see that V is now there. That means they're locked together. So when I click on them, you'll see they both highlight. So there you go. Now you have your good 32-bit flow audio connected to your video really easily. Now you'll notice our 32-bit flow audio is really quiet. Back on the Western Beltline, but this time I have my DJI Mic 2. And that's because, again, it's 32-bit flow. The way it's recorded is in such a way that it can never quite peak anything. It's so amazing. So don't freak out when you see that. Something you can easily do is just right click on it and go to your audio gain And from there, what I usually do, if I am gonna be working in 32-bit flow audio, which I will probably do for this audio that I'm recording right now to talk to y'all, I just set my gain to like +10 or +15, and that's usually enough. Let's play it back.
Yeah, it's gonna sound better because I'm holding a microphone like straight to my mouth right now. Now, something I will say about using a DJI Mic 2 with...
Perfect. All right, and so with that, let's head back over to the Halise that's in the living room. So there you have it, all things audio with your Osmo Pocket 3 without purchasing some random other thing. It's keeping it all in the family. You know what I'm saying? That being said though, if you wanna know my favorite accessories for my Osmo Pocket 3, check out this video. I cover my 3 favorite accessories in detail and why. Because, you know, I got to teach you a little bit of some. And then also, if you're interested in my color correction and color grading for my Osmo Pocket 3 footage, check out this video. I cover all of that as well. Again, I'm Halise, endeavoring to persevere as always. I'll see you when I see you. Toodles.